Making headlines, Ambassador of Maldives to China expresses confidence that National Airlines China would be a major success. Begins and Business Center Corporation signs an agreement with the Formula City Council to establish a creator hub. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to PSM News in English with me, Idham Naim. Ambassador of the Maldives to China, Dr. Fazil Najib, expresses confidence that Maldives National Airline, Maldivians' launch of its wide-body operations to China would be a major success due to the increasing demand for Maldives tourism in China.
Maldivian has launched direct flights to Chinese capital Beijing after inaugurating its wide-body operations to Chengdu earlier this week. Maldivian commenced long-haul operations to China with its newest acquisition, the wide-body Airbus A330-200. In an exclusive interview with PSM News, Dr. Fazil said the volume of tourists in China market would provide huge demand for Maldivian flight operations, adding that the long-awaited initiative would also provide a major boost to the island nation's economy. The ambassador also noted that the Chinese media follows the developments of the Maldives very closely and urged the public to cooperate with the efforts of Maldivian, adding that this was a matter of great national pride for the whole country. In conjunction with the introduction of the Airbus A330-200, Maldivian has announced a special promotional fare. According to Maldivian, promotional fares are 30% to 50% lower than current fare rates in China. Passengers would also get 40 kg baggage allowance and in-flight meals on the special fare. The new Airbus A330-200 with a seating capacity of 264 passengers offers 3 cabin classes: economy, business and premium. The acquisition fulfills an electoral commitment by President Dr. Mohamed Muiz to introduce 2 wide-body aircrafts for Island Aviation Services, the operator of Maldivian. The government also plans to acquire an additional wide-body aircraft and initiate flights to European destinations by October this year.
Maldives immigration begins monitoring public areas frequented by foreign nationals under efforts to address behaviors that could harm public interest.
Immigration stated that recent observations have shown that some foreign nationals gathering in public areas have been engaging in activities detrimental to the community. Therefore, officers from the Immigration Law Enforcement and Compliance Department are actively monitoring public areas to prevent such incidents. Immigration noted that if any undocumented migrants are identified during these patrols, the task force will take the necessary action against them. Recently, a physical altercation among migrant workers occurred at the artificial beach in Male, where a local individual filming the incident was also attacked. An Indian national who created unrest at the scene was detained and deported. In reference to the incident, immigration has emphasized that no second chances will be granted to any foreign national who endangers public safety. The government has been intensifying efforts to resolve the long-standing issue of undocumented migrant workers in the Maldives. As part of this initiative, a special operation titled Operation Kurangi is being conducted across the Maldives. The biometric data of over 25,000 migrant workers have been collected by the Ministry of Homeland Security and Technology as part of this operation.
Business Center Corporation BCC signs an agreement with the Formula City Council to establish a creator hub in the city. The agreement was signed by BCC Managing Director Ibrahim Ziaur Mohammed during a ceremony held on Saturday, while the Mayor of Formula, Ismail Rafiq, signed on behalf of the City Council.
Speaking after the signing, Ziaur said the establishment of such creator hubs throughout the country will accelerate President Dr. Mohamed Muiz's vision to build a creative economy in the Maldives. He added that the facilitation of creativity and innovation will also pave the way to solutions played in society today. The BCC is committed to seeking the input and consultation of artists in the efforts to build a creative economy in the Maldives. The BCC is holding creative conferences throughout the country to seek opinions and consultations of the artists. In addition to the main creator hub in the capital Male, the BCC will also establish creator hubs in different parts of the country to cater to artists across the country. Stated as a pledge outlined in President Dr. Mohamed Muiz's manifesto, the creative economy strategy is now road-mapped extending over 5 years. The plan covers a comprehensive scope from integrating creative programs in schools and higher education curricula to providing incubation services and resources for professionals and aspiring artists in various creative fields. With the Creative Economy Strategy, President Muiz also initiated the Creative Economy Fund. The fund will support all individuals proposing to venture into creative fields. Initially, the funding will be focused on filmmaking, music production, arts and crafts, and digital content creation. More creative industries will be applicable starting in 2025.
There is too much pessimism around Europe, and it could be time to be investing back in the region, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink says in the World Economic Forum annual meeting. Eurozone business began the new year with a modest return to growth as stable services activity in January was complemented by an easing of the long-running downturn in manufacturing, a survey released earlier on Friday showed.
There's too much pessimism in Europe. For somebody who's been pessimistic in Europe for like 10 years, if I had my number one observation this week in Davos, the pessimism, I've never felt, the pessimism to be larger and more profound. And I believe it's probably time to be investing back into Europe. It was very, I've said repeatedly here in Davos, I could see a scenario, I'm not calling for it, but I can't see a scenario where we have a 5.5% 10-year.
On the same panel, IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva and ECB President Christine Lagarde agreed Europe needed to better mobilize capital to boost its economy.
There is no question that what is happening outside is a challenge, but it's also a big opportunity for revisiting and deciding whether or not Europe wants to be a key player. But I'm contending that it has the talent and it has the means and it has the ambition. Yes, you sit at the table. Yes, you negotiate. Yes, some countries are in a stronger position than others. But we all need each other. If there is one thing that the Europeans have learned over the course of time since the end of the Second World War, is that you cannot go alone. You have to work together. You have to respect each other's and you have to understand each other's. For that, you sit at the table and you work.
Speaking about the outlook of US inflation, BlackRock's Fink said he was not too worried, adding that the US Treasury yield curve reflected expectations for higher inflation and also fiscal deficits. The benchmark US 10-year Treasury yield trading at 4.64% US 10 YT equals R has risen from lows of around 3.60% in September. Wall Street's main indexes closes lower as investors stepped back while they digested a mixed bag of economic data and earnings reports and prepared for a week filled with economic releases and a Federal Reserve meeting.
The technology sector was the biggest drag on the market as mega cap stocks, including Nvidia, reversed after rallying sharply earlier in the week. At the end of a relatively light week for data, traders were betting the Fed would keep borrowing cost unchanged at its January 28 to 29 meeting and expects its first rate cut in June, the latest data from CME Group's Fed Watch tool showed.
This week we saw the S&P 500 make a new historic high. And today we're sort of digesting that, flat to a little bit down. I don't think anyone's going to reach conclusions about the action today in the market. What we're really going to take from all of this is that there is, optimism with some caution with the new administration stepping in. And when we look across the market, we do know there's that handful of top 10, top 15 S&P 500 stocks that are richly valued and have had tremendous runs. But that leaves us about 485 stocks that are at very reasonable valuations and have not fully participated. So this is still a very attractive market moving forward for investors. I think what we saw in this first week brought down some of the concerns into year end. There was a mix of the market reacting very strongly to our change in leadership. And then, of course, there's all the campaign road speeches, and people start thinking that'll be reality in the markets. And that gave us that mixed market. And in the very first few days, I think investors went back to really remembering what it was like under the first Trump presidency from a business and market standpoint. He came out with things that were generally widely accepted and applauded in the business environment. He did not act quickly with extreme moves on some of the other things he's spoken about, and reminded investors that there is a difference between what gets executed and what gets talked about and synthesized through Congress.
The S&P 500 lost 17.47 points or 0.29% to end at 6,101.24 points, while the Nasdaq Composite lost 99.38 points or 0.5% to 19,954.30. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 140.82 points or 0.32% to 44,424.25. On a weekly basis, the indices were looking at their second straight week of advances.
The Palestinian movement Hamas hands 4 female Israeli soldier hostages over to the International Committee of the Red Cross in Gaza, releasing them in return for some 200 Palestinian prisoners. The 4 hostages were led onto a podium in Gaza City amid a large crowd of Palestinians and surrounded by dozens of armed Hamas men. They waved and smiled before being led off, entering ICRC vehicles and being transported to Israeli forces. The Israeli military said it had received the 4 in Gaza. They are being released in exchange for 200 Palestinian prisoners under a ceasefire agreement aimed at ending the 15-month-old war in Gaza. The 4 soldiers, Karina Arif, Daniela Gilboa, Naama Levi and Eliri Albag, were all stationed at an observation post on the edge of Gaza and abducted by Hamas fighters who overran their on Israel on October 7, 2020. Released hostages were taken to a hospital in central Israel, the Israeli Health Ministry said. Hamas said convicted militants serving life sentences for their involvement in attacks that killed dozens of people. According to Hamas, around 70 are said to be deported. The United Nations says that the Houthis, who control northern Yemen, had detained an unspecified number of UN personnel, and it was suspending movement in all Houthi-held areas while seeking the detainees' immediate release. In a statement, the UN gave no further details about the arrests, which it said had taken place on Thursday in the area of the capital, Sana'a. All official movements of UN staff into or within Houthi-held areas had been suspended to protect the safety of staffs. The UN was actively engaging with senior Houthi representatives to demand the immediate and unconditional release of all its detained personnel and partners.
You will have seen that in a statement issued this morning by the Office of the Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator in Yemen, that the de facto authorities in Sana'a detained additional UN personnel working in areas under their control. In response to that, we suspended all official movements into and within areas under the de facto authorities' control. The measure will remain in place until further notice. Our officials in Yemen are actively engaging with senior leaders.
Houthi officials not immediately be reached for comment. The Houthis, who are the United Nations, also complained last June that the group had detained 11 members of its staff. The Houthis have also held around 20 Yemeni employees of in 2014. Indonesia and India signed a wide range of agreements covering culture, health, maritime, security and digital. The ceremony was witnessed by Indonesia's President Prabowo Subianto and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi ahead of India's Republic Day celebrations on Sunday. President Prabowo said his government will accelerate
many key sectors of common interest in which we would like to accelerate the level of cooperation. We also would like to thank India for supporting our permanent membership in BRICS. We are convinced that this cooperation will be beneficial to global stability and regional cooperation.
Speaking before Prabowo's remark, Prime Minister Modi said the two countries will work together in defense manufacturing and improving supply chain. American Madison Keys produces an inspired display to beat defending champion Aryna Sabalenka 6-3, 2-6, 7-5 in the Australian Open final and captures her maiden Grand Slam title. The 29-year-old, who became the fourth oldest first-time Grand Slam champion in the professional era, ended a top seed Sabalenka's bid for a third straight Melbourne Park crown. Belarusian Sabalenka made a couple of double faults to drop serve in the opening game and looked off colour in the early exchanges as Keys heaped pressure on the top seed with a dipping cross-court winner en route to a double break. The 19th seed rode her luck after a net court winner and went up 5-1 in 20 minutes before conceding a break with the way Sabalenka gifted her set point with the 11th winner with a backhand down the line to clinch the opening set, but Sabalenka began to mix up her game in the next set and sliced her till 5-5 in the decider, but there was one final momentum shift as Keys produced blistering winners to claim the next two games and the biggest triumph of her career. She was overcome by emotion and shed tears with her team in the stands while Sabalenka smashed her racket and covered her face with a towel. Keys is the first player to claim the trophy by defeating the world number 1 and 2 at a major tournament since Russian Svetlana at the 2009 French Open and the first Melbourne Park since compatriot Serena Williams 20 years ago. The American was beaten by compatriot Sloane Stephens in the 2017 US Open final and has since struggled to go past the quarterfinals and semi-finals at major tournaments. Keys became the second oldest woman to capture her first Australian Open singles title in the professional era after China's Li Na, who was 31 when she won the title in Melbourne 11 years ago. The creator of Danish political TV drama Borgen, Adam Price, says US President Donald Trump's wish to control Greenland has created an absurd reality that has made it more challenging to write political fiction. Trump's refusal to rule out using military or economic power to take control of Greenland, a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark, has caught many by surprise, including Price. Price said in an interview with Reuters that had he pitched Trump's idea as a plot for a season of the show, people would have said he was completely out of his mind.
You always have to push, push reality, because fiction can never kind of be more dull than reality. And when reality becomes absurd, like I think it has become in recent weeks, when we are talking about the current situation with Greenland and Trump and Trump's demands. What are we to write? Because if I had pitched this as a new season of Borgen, I think most people would say, like 5 or 10 years ago, that I was completely out of my mind and lost my sense of reality.
Price 57 said he was concerned that what previously had been considered politically extreme or bizarre would increasingly be considered normal under Trump's presidency. In fact, Price did anticipate the current international focus on Greenland in the latest season of his fictional series from 2022, in which the vast Arctic island makes a significant discovery of oil and becomes the center of a power struggle between Denmark, Russia, China and the United States.
I'm always on the lookout for new stories in a political universe, and I don't believe that we have said the last word in the Borgen universe. So actually, in the last episode of the latest season, we actually push Birgitte Nyborg gently towards Brussels and a possible continuation of her political career there. So who knows if we manage to do a story there? It would be really interesting because I think a lot of people believe that the EU is something quite remote and difficult to grasp. So that would be a great ambition, I think, to make it very present, very alive, and very necessary.
As in the last season of Borgen, Trump's remarks have thrust Greenland into the global spotlight, reigniting a public debate about independence and the island's complicated relationship with Denmark, its former colonial power. Borgen, which in Danish means fortress, a direct reference to the informal name of Denmark's parliament, was first aired in 2010 and tells a fictional story of Denmark's first female prime minister and her rise to power. Price said one idea for a potential new season of Borgen could be to make the EU sexy in a dramatic way, as many viewers may find the European Union difficult to grasp. That concludes news for now. Thank you for watching PSM News. Have a good day.
හෆ්තා එනිමිගෙන්